Talk Radio, you're in to all things music.
It was just one of those years where it was like, okay, what's happening next, you know? In hindsight, I think I was really grieving about a lot of things. But I have to say, when Joanna Kotwas, who invited me to start playing for the kids, you know, the kids showed me, man, you know, it's all good. They were in the moment. They weren't worrying about what happened 30 seconds ago or what was happening in the next minute. They were focused on, like, right here and now. And it was like, okay. And simply just being around their innocence and their joie de vivre, their joy of everything, it really helped me get out of myself.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Welcome to the show, and thanks for tuning in. I want to let you know how much I appreciate you joining us on our show. If you missed our last interview, you can hear it and all of our episodes at entertalkradio.com/makingit, or download our app and take us with you. So often I get asked questions about the creative process, so I created this show to focus on what it takes to have a lasting career in the ever-changing landscape of the music business. So you're really in for a treat, as I've invited my friends, some of the best and brightest in music, to share their stories on how they have influenced the music that has shaped our lives. I guarantee you're going to love it. So let's get started. My guest today is singer-songwriter, touring musician, and professional coffee roaster, Chazz Frichtel. As a bassist, singer-songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist, Chazz has recorded and performed with artists as talented and diverse as Michael McDonald, Christopher Cross, Chuck Mangione, Wilson Phillips, Karla Bonoff, Perla Batalla, David Pack, Chaka Khan, Maureen McGovern, Gregory Hines, Raquel Welch, and Jillian, Sheena Easton, Vonda Sheppard, Tony Orlando, and many others. He has appeared on numerous television and film soundtracks, commercials, jingles, and albums. Chazz can also be heard singing the title theme song and playing bass on NBC's Saved by the Bell, which has aired continuously from 1989 to today. He is a long-standing member of SAG-AFTRA and endorses Sadowsky Guitars. Please welcome my guest today, Chazz Frichtel. Hi, Chazz.
Hey, Terry.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, man. I'm thrilled to be here with you today and talk about life, liberty, music, and the pursuit of happiness.
Right, or the pursuit of music.
Or the pursuit of music, anyway, which you know, is a fantastic way to be happy and bring happiness and joy into the world. So that's cool.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's great. And, you know, and one great example of that is the song that we just opened up the show with, which is a beautiful song that you co-wrote with Michael McDonald. And tell everybody the name of the song and where they can find the complete version of that, because it's just magnificent.
Oh, well, thanks so much. The song's called Honest Emotion, and it's on Mike McDonald's latest project, which is called Wide Open. And needless to say, for multiple reasons, I'm thrilled to have a co-write on there with Mike. You know, I toured with Mike for almost 2 decades. I think it's about 18 years. And he is someone who, as an artist, I have the utmost respect for. And as a human being, I have even greater respect for. So to have a co-write on this project is great. Oddly enough, we wrote that song back in 2000.
Wow.
And so it sat around for a long time. Yeah, 17 years. The album was released in September 2017. So that's the great thing about a song, though, is I guess it has to find its own time. But I'm just thrilled he recorded it.
Yeah, I'm thrilled for you and for Mike, because first of all, that's a gorgeous album. I've been listening to it, and the live strings and very heartfelt record. It moved me deeply. But I want to. How did that song relive? How did it? Was it something that's always been floating around in Mike's lexicon of things that he might record, or did you submit that to him, or?
Well, I don't know. It was recorded after we wrote it, and I want to send a shout out to. There's a third writer on this, our good friend John Goodwin, who's a genius in his own right. But Amy, Mike's wife, was the first person to record that song, and she did it on her first solo record in a long time, and did a marvelous job on it. And then Betty Buckley did a live version of it as well. And as far as, I think it had been kind of in Mike's mind to maybe do something with it, but, time went by, and then I did my last solo project, which I titled Honest Emotion, and I sent it to him. And so I don't know if that had anything to do with him recording it or not. He may have heard my version and gone, "Oh man, I got to do this right." You never know. But I think it was just kind of floating around, and I know he always liked the song, and I love it. And I particularly love his approach to it, because he's such a powerhouse singer. And in this particular version, you get to hear a different quality in his voice. It's kind of, it's more vulnerable and
right.
less kind of in your face than when he's singing like an R&B thing or whatnot. It's lovely.
Right.
He did an amazing job on it. And I love the fact that there's banjo on it in there. It's
right.
It's really cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
So
kudos
to Mike's version, I got to say.
Yeah, all the versions that I've heard are really lovely. I want to mention your other albums as well. You've got 3 solo albums: Honest Emotion, which is your most current CD, My Therapist's Couch, which came out in 2006, and Perfect Moment, which I believe was your first solo record.
Yeah, that was the first experiment. I recorded that when I was living. I moved to Nashville from LA in 97 and lived there for about 4.5 years, and really went there to just kind of indulge my songwriting. And because Nashville it's a fabulous songwriters town, and I will forever be indebted to that place, because it's a place where songwriters are held in very high esteem. I mean, songwriters can actually get like bank loans there. And it's viewed as a legitimate profession. But anyway, so the first record just turned out to be, kind of a bunch of song demos, really, that I thought, well, let's press this onto a CD. What the heck,
Right. Can you share the story of, I know you've got a lot of stories of your time in Nashville, but something really remarkable happened when you decided to move back to Los Angeles regarding where you ended up living. And I just think it's a great story.
Yeah, for years and years, I lived in Culver City before I moved to Nashville. And when I decided that my tenure in Nashville was up, I sent out a few emails to friends that were in the LA area and in the West Side area, and including my ex-landlords, and said, hey, I'm going to be looking for a place. If you know of anything, please let me know. So as it turned out, my landlords emailed me back and said, oddly enough, your old place, the very place I had moved from, is coming up again. Would you be interested in coming back to it? And I said, heck yes, because I love that place.
Yeah.
So that was taken care of. And then I was calling to set up a landline number, and I was asking if there are any 558 prefixes. And the gal at the phone company said, no, we don't have any 558 prefixes, but we have a 559 one. And I said, well, what's the number? And she goes, 559-8482. Well, my old number was 558-8482.
Right.
So I took that as a sign, like, yeah, you're supposed to go back to LA, and all all your ducks are kind of lining up here. So, but that was rather incredible, I have to say. Also a little weird. Let's do the time warp again,
Well, basically, because when you decided to move, as we all do, when we make the commitment to move to a different part of the country to pursue our musical paths, we commit to it. You just sort of let go of everything and get rid of things. You give away things, you sell things, you don't keep a B plan going. So to really just, with no net, move from Los Angeles, where you had created this fabulous career, to Nashville to indulge your songwriting career, and then decide to come back, and for you to end up literally in the same place with almost the same phone number, I would agree that was a sign that both moves were where you needed to be.
Well, both moves had to happen. Although I have to say, the decision to go to Nashville was it wasn't easy, because I'd been very fortunate here, and it had taken quite a while to connect the dots, but through the late 80s and 90s, my career really kind of went on the ascent. And yet I felt this need to, by my career, I mean, my career had become a little bit more focused on being a session sideman touring musician. And my writing had kind of been pushed aside in the name of just surviving, and living. So I went to Nashville really because I was hearing so many great things about it, and so many great things about the songwriting community, all of which turned out to be true. And even though I decided to come back here to LA, my time in Nashville was really special. And I feel was very successful in that I feel that when I did return to LA, I returned as a much better writer than the person who arrived there. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason for that was mostly the greatest thing I got out of Nashville was the songwriting there. It's all about telling a story, and lyric writing is, man, I heard so many brilliant lyrics while I was there. And so it made me kind of refocus my writing, and I got a little less harmonic, chordally, what's the word I'm looking for? I stopped worrying about that so much and worried a lot more about just kind of telling a story. And that was the greatest thing I got out of Nashville. Met some great writers, and did a lot of co-writing, and it was really a good time. It's a great town. Great town.
I've heard you say before that your experience really was telling a story and creating musical poetry. And
right.
I remember hearing you talk about that as well, and that's a really good description of your experience there.
Well, and I must say, Mike McDonald and John Goodwin both. I sort of organized that session. I don't remember exactly how it came down, but we'd all talked about writing together. I'm telling you, man, being in the room with those two guys, they have a really amazing poetic paint set. It was just something to behold. I mean, a lot of the time I was just sitting there going like, the ideas that they were throwing out back and forth were stunning to me. You know, they were very poetic, and I'm kind of going like, okay, see Jane run. You know, those guys are awesome poets, man. They really are.
Yeah, for me, that's one of the most beautiful parts of collaboration as a songwriter is sitting in a room with one or two other writers and just getting inside of each other's head and heart and seeing how people can wrap their way around a word and a story and a melody. Absolutely.
It was really fun. We got actually 2 songs out of that session, but Honest Emotion is the one that kind of, I think that was the outstanding one. But I love the other song too, although it was very, very, very different and very sort of impressionistic. Really a different thing for Mike. And Mike and John really came up with something. I think it was called House of Blue Light, which the title alone is kind of cool. Yeah. So maybe, who knows, maybe at some point Mike will cut that. You never know. Or one of us will cut it or do something with it. It's a cool song.
So Chazz, let's go back to your path, your early childhood. I know that your mom was a singer and your grandfather, Robert Coley, on your mom's side was a musician and the person who got you started on guitar. Can you talk about your early life, your mom and dad, and where you grew up, and were you out playing sports or were you always playing bass and guitar and singing? How did you get started?
Well, it all started for me in Norfolk, Virginia. That's where I was born, and that's where I lived until I was about 6. And then my mom remarried, and we moved up to New Jersey for about a year because my dad worked for Bell Labs, and then he transferred to GE in upstate New York. But my mom was the musician in the house and had an amazing singing voice. I mean, just beautiful. And she played piano, and she ended up being our Unitarian Church choir director. So of course I got drafted into the choir. And her dad, Robert Coley, who you mentioned, as a young man belonged to a group called 2B's Royal Hawaiians. And he was in that group with his brother, Elbert, who played a National Steel guitar made in Los Angeles at the time. And they had some success. I mean, they played Hawaiian music, which was very popular in the late 20s. And they ended up getting a recording contract with a label that's still in effect today called OK Records. And as I found out recently, their records sold in Australia and Japan. And anyway, things kind of came to a crashing halt for them when 2B's was the rayon mill that they both worked in and that sponsored their group. And there was a debilitating strike that brought the mill to a halt. And so they tried to carry on for a little while after that, but things happened. You know, my grandfather had 2 young girls to raise, and so he went to electrician school and ended up working in the Norfolk Naval Shipyard as an electrician the rest of his life. And then as far as my youth, I mean, there was always music in the house. My mom was a big fan of shows, Broadway shows and show tunes. And she was always playing piano. So we always had some records going. And it seems like, I don't know when I decided exactly to become a musician, but it seems like there were only 3 things I was ever completely interested in, and one was music, and the other was probably for the longest time was just sports. I love sports and playing sports and whatnot.
Right.
And the third was I've always really enjoyed history throughout school and seeing what's happened before we got here, you know.
Yeah, you're a huge history buff. I know that you love watching documentaries, and that's a big part of why you've loved traveling the world.
Yes, you know, and it is amazing. I do love documentaries. I find them far more interesting than fiction in general. And, you know, having had the blessing and the opportunity to travel the world as I have, and, you know, it's amazing when you land in some of the old cities of Europe, or you go to the old capital of Japan, like Osaka, mm-hmm. and you can, the history is tangible, you know, you can feel it. And I'm always trying to find out a little bit more about this or that, or I just find it fascinating. So Chazz, I do as well, by the way, and especially when I go to an old city, like when I went to Rome for the first time, everything, or Greece and saw the Parthenon, and, you know, or, you know, my whole perception of history changed. You know, it became so tangible and real to me, and so much more interesting. And they weren't just words and dates. Yeah. Yes, exactly. You know, when you go to the British Museum and you see documents, you know, you see the Magna Carta or and you go to these European cities and you realize, wow, the United States, we are the new kids on the block. You know, we're the young upstarts here, you know. Mm-hmm. It's pretty humbling, actually.
It really is. So back to your childhood. When did you end up, did you go to music conservatory? Were you taking vocal lessons when you were a kid, or did you just always sing because your mom sang? What was your formal training?
Yeah. You know, through grade school, I never took any vocal training per se, but I was involved in choirs, and as I mentioned, my mom's choir. And it's funny, the first instrument I tried to play was, I got interested in trumpet, of all things. But as a young kid, I had, it wasn't severe asthma, but I had enough asthma to where playing trumpet was a no-go. That wasn't going to work. And then I got interested in playing drums. And not a drum set, but just drums and percussion in general, mallets and things like that, which I actually studied all through high school, and actually went on to college as a percussion major. And one of my dear friends that I went to school with, Jim Eckert, I ended up getting in a little combo that he had in, like, I don't know, 8th grade or something, because he actually had a drum set and we were playing in band together, and I was playing timpani and mallets and stuff. And I got into playing bass completely by accident. The guy that was playing in his bass, who I'd been playing basketball with at the time, decided he'd had enough. And I thought, man, I can get in my friend's band if I play this bass. And I also thought, if it's good enough for Paul McCartney, it's good enough for me.
That's what I'm thinking. I remember another bass player who had a similar experience from the Beatles.
Yeah, and I thought, well, this is great because Paul plays it, and it has this melodic aspect to it, and it also has this rhythmic aspect to it. So, and I didn't have a drum kit, you know, and my friend did, so... But, yeah, man, you know, it's funny because through my freshman year of college, I started off at University of South Carolina, and then ended up transferring up to Berklee College of Music, because at that point, after a year at South Carolina, I'd really decided and committed to playing the bass and pursuing that. And so I went on up to Boston and had some wonderful teachers. Got to study with a guy who was the principal bassist with the Boston Symphony. I studied acoustic bass with Bill Curtis. And then electric bass with Rich Appleman, who was head of the department for years and years up until pretty recently. And also had the occasional lesson when Rich couldn't make it with Steve Swallow, which was just fantastic.
Wonderful.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And my time at Berklee was great. Really enjoyed it. Very different school back in the early 70s from what it is now. Nowhere near as large. But yeah, so that was kind of my training. And I was so lucky in our high school. We had some wonderful band directors. A guy named Dick Robolato, who has since passed, was a major influence on my life. And the band rooms kind of became my refuge throughout junior high and high school. I was always going down there because to play the piano or just to be down in the band room with Mr. Robolato, who was a great guy and really inspirational person in a lot of people's lives.
I'm so glad that you're mentioning your teachers and mentors, because they're such an important part of forming, not just careers, but good, happy lives, and thank you to all of our teachers. It's been, it's quite a calling to be an educator.
It truly is. And Dick, Dick, that was his calling, was to be an educator. Right. And, this is so cool. In high school, we had a little group that played at high school dances and whatnot. And we had a little horn band. And one of our trumpet players couldn't make it. So Dick came and played the gig with us. Now, how cool is that?
In high school. That's great.
Yeah, in high school. And I just thought, oh, man, you were the king, He was a lovely man. And, yeah, man, especially we had in upstate New York, I went to a very, very small school, but we had one of the state's best wind ensembles. We competed every year, and many times we're in the top 2 or 3, if not the top wind ensemble.
Right.
And, you see what's happening in schools today where arts funding is being cut, and it breaks my heart because band and Mr. Robolato and Mr. Cimino and our choir directors and things, man, that was one of the reasons I got up in the morning, was they made life so much more interesting and fun. And, I hope that we realize that the arts are an absolutely key part to a well-rounded person and a happy and well-rounded life.
It's interesting that you're saying that and talking about that, because I know full circle, more recently you've gotten involved in going and playing music at preschool. And you told me that it actually helped you beat depression and grieving of some family members and friends that you had lost, and that the kids actually saved you from yourself. And could you talk about that and why that was important to you and how that really helped you and helped them? Yeah.
This is a few years back. I was living in Culver City, and I was just sitting out on the porch playing acoustic guitar. And this wonderful woman came up to me and she goes, "You must be a musician, right?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And she goes, "I have this little preschool up the street. I was wondering if you'd ever want to come by and play a little bit for the kids." And I said, "Sure, I'd love to." So we set up a time, and I took my guitar up, and she had a little preschool of 5 or 6 kids. And so the first time I went, I played maybe 2 songs, and they lost interest. And she said, "Would you mind coming back?" And I said, "No, I'd love to come back." So anyway, to cut to the chase, over the next few weeks, we eventually built up to an hour. I would go over there for an hour, and interacting with these kids would be poignant enough in and of itself. But it was particularly poignant for me because previous to that happening had been a pretty difficult year for me. It was a year where 2 of my, I'm going to go in, I guess, No, there's no particular order, but two of my bandmates that I'd been playing with in Chuck Mangione's band were killed in a plane crash en route to a concert in Buffalo, Jerry Nywood and Coleman Mellett. And that was really, really a blow. And my dad also passed that year. And a dear friend of mine who I worked with in upstate New York before I moved to California took his own life. And it was just one of those years where it was like, okay, what's happening next, you know? And I would think I was, in hindsight, I think I was really grieving about a lot of things. But I have to say, when Joanna Kotwis is the name of the lady that, beautiful, wonderful gal who invited me to start playing for the kids, you know, the kids showed me, man, you know, it's all good. They were in the moment. They weren't worrying about what happened 30 seconds ago or what was happening in the next minute. They were focused on, like, right here and now. And it was like, okay. And simply just being around their innocence and their joie de vivre, their joy of everything, it really helped me get out of myself. And I also think doing something for and with them helped heal my heart and my spirit. Yeah. And Joanna just, you know, the preschool is no longer there because when her kids went on to kindergarten, she shut the school down. But she was marvelous with the kids. And, you know, man, I have to say they're probably the best audience I've ever played for. They were great. Just wonderful. I'll tell you, we had two separate classes that came through, and she would have a little graduation ceremony. And, man, those kids, they really wiggle their way into your hearts. And it was tough saying goodbye to them. Yeah. But I was happy with the knowledge and the hope that I had made a good experience for them, especially with music, because that was what brought us all together. And we had a lot of laughs and good times. So it was a wonderful, it was heaven sent, you know. Joanna was one of my personal earth angels. So that was a fantastic time.
You know, since you mentioned your dad as well as your really dear friends that you had lost, I know that a song that you wrote called "Here with You." You actually conceived it on a flight from California to Virginia to be with your dad when he began his chemotherapy. And if it's not too personal, would you mind sharing your experience of playing that song for your dad? Because I know he did get to hear it.
Yeah, he did get to hear it, and he didn't get to hear it in finished form, but I was thinking about some of it. I started it on a flight to Virginia to visit him when he was first starting his chemotherapy treatments. And when I returned to LA, the rest of the pieces of the song kind of fell together, and I did a quick little demo of it with guitar, bass, and a vocal. And I went back to see him at Christmas time, and I gave him the song as one of his Christmas presents. And I think he enjoyed it. I mean, in the face of it's just kind of a positive message song about kind of going back to what I had learned or was yet to learn with the kids. It's kind of like, right. For right now, I'm here with you. So this moment's all that really matters. So come what may, let's just milk this moment for everything we can possibly contribute to it and get from it. And he enjoyed it. My dad was he was a GE engineering type guy. And I think when I announced that I was going to be a professional musician, I think it scared him to death. But, along the way, he became one of my I think, one of my biggest fans and supporters, because he saw I was committed and I was dedicated to doing this thing. And it was great. But he enjoyed the song. He enjoyed the song, and I was happy I could give him something like that, you know. Yeah,
I'm glad you had that opportunity to share that with him.
Yeah, me too. In all honesty, I wish I'd never had, the circumstances weren't in place where I'd written that song, but considering that they were in place, I'm glad I could do that for him. You know?
Right.
He'd given me so much in his life, so.
Thanks for sharing that. I know it's personal. Yeah.
Chazz, my pleasure.
How did you make your decision after you finished college to go to LA versus Los Angeles or Chicago or anywhere? Or did you come here first?
No, right after school, I moved to, let's see, when I left Berkeley, I didn't graduate from Berkeley. I never finished my degree or anything. I got so antsy to get out into the quote unquote real world. I couldn't take another sitting in class, you know. And a friend of mine, a great friend, Jim Eckert, who I've recently been back in touch with, we played Little League together and started our first bands together. He was a graduate from Ithaca College, and he was the guy that had the drum set back in the day. Well, he had a band, and we were talking on the phone. He said, "Hey, man," he goes, "if you're leaving school, we have an opening in my little band here in Ithaca, New York. We need a singing bass player." And I said, "I'm there." So we did that for a while, and it was great. We all lived in the same house. It was a very communal thing. We traveled together. Maybe it was a little too close. I don't know. but,
right. I'm thinking of the girlfriends that you shared or did not.
Well, here was the wicked part about it. I was the last guy to come into the house. So all the other official bedrooms were occupied, and the only place that wasn't occupied was the sun porch. So, which was just this big glass porch, enclosed porch. So I slept out there the first winter, and let me tell you, I had a hefty sleeping bag. It was freezing.
I'm sure you did. Yeah.
But anyway, eventually I decided to come to LA. I went down to New York City and spent a little time down there, and quickly realized that was not my scene. I couldn't take the sort of the pace. It was not me. I was a country kid, and it was a little too fast for me. But even more importantly than that, LA offered. There was so much music that had come from this area that I loved, whether it was, let's say, the Beach Boys or the Byrds or Buffalo Springfield or CSNY or the Dubs. It just seemed like California had this amazing appeal to me. And then, oddly enough, my first trip to LA was part of a little recording project that I got pulled in on. And the project was centered around this guy named Rebop Kwakuba, who was a percussionist and had played with Traffic, and he had some kind of deal going with Island Records. So anyway, I got pulled in on this project, and as it turned out, Rebop kind of disappeared, and so we were left going like, well, we've got some time here in LA. What do we do? And my friend Carmonica, who I was playing with in upstate New York, said, well, Chazz has written some songs, so why don't you play them for the guys? So I played a couple of songs, and Reg Powell, our keyboard player, said, you know what, man, let's go cut these. So we cut 3 songs over at Conway Studios, Buddy Brundo's place, which is still there and still happening. Marvelous studio. Yeah. So we made a little demo tape, and then everybody went back to their respective places. Carmen and I went back to upstate New York, and Jack Toker, our drummer, went back to Seattle. And Reg was here in L.A., and so he and his lawyer, a guy named Walter Scott, started shopping this little demo tape. And lo and behold, we got some bites. So I was staying in contact with Reg because I had seen the promised land. I mean, I landed here in the second week in February, and Reg was living up off the Palisades in Santa Monica. And I remember standing on that cliff looking out at the Pacific and swaying palm trees, and I've got salt stains on my boots, and I'm peeling off clothes because I'm burning up.
Yeah.
But I just went, oh my God, where have I landed? I have to come here. And then with Reg's encouragement, and it looked like we might actually get some kind of something going, which unfortunately never came to fruition. I went back to New York State and said, I'm going to LA. And probably the single best decision I ever made in my life.
So how did that, what was the random moment that led you to your first tour when you moved here?
Well, let me think about this. The first real tour that I did, I had played and done some touring with Marilyn McCoo and Billy Davis. And I think I fell into that through my friend Jeff Hull, who was playing drums with them, and Jeff and I were playing in various bands. And actually we were playing in my friend Mark Hatch's band, fantastic trumpet player. He had a little group called Whirlwind, and Mark had been playing with Rufus and Chaka Khan. And Chaka, they were supposed to do a tour of Japan, and I guess Chaka showed up and the band was not rehearsed, and she said, I'm going to cancel the tour. So Mark and Doug Norwine, the sax player, said to her, we have a ready-made band. Give us 2 days. Don't bail on the tour. So he called all of us, basically, to come in and play. And so we rehearsed for a couple of days. Chaka came in, dug it, and next thing I knew, we were going to Japan. And that was the first time I'd been out of the country other than going to Canada or Mexico. And this was like 1983. And, oh man, it was, it was fantastic. So that was kind of how the first major touring thing happened. And Chaka Khan, my God, come on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the bar got set high.
Oh my goodness. And of course for me, I went to school on a lot of what Anthony Jackson had played on the records, which is so killer, you know. So it was a trial by fire for me, but we had a great tour, and it was wonderful, and yeah, that was incredible. And I came back to town thinking, okay, I'm off and running now, and it's like, you know, it took a while before crickets. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it took a while.
I had the same experience. You know, I toured with Billy Preston. I came back and I go, here we go. You know, it's like, you know, everything is now begun, and it was quite a slow year to get the next thing to happen. And Michael Thompson told me the same thing. You know, wonderful studio guitar player. You know, he did a tour and then ended up driving a taxi. You know, too. So it's, you know, it's. I'm not surprised to hear that, but you certainly landed on your feet.
Well, I did, but here was the cool thing, and here's, you know, in 1983, at the very least, I could come back and do casuals, you know, and there seemed to be enough work to kind of stay afloat, whether it was casuals or playing people's demos. Of course, this is way back before a lot of people had home studios and way pre-computer stuff.
Right.
But fortunately, in that interim before the next touring thing or whatever happened, I was lucky enough to stay afloat.
Right. And the beauty of doing all of those casuals is some of those relationships and experiences led to continuing tours, you know, with other artists. You know, a lot of wonderful musicians got major work from, you know, people remembering how cool it was playing with them at a wedding or a bar mitzvah. a private function.
Hey, man, I was thinking, I was thinking the other day, and can I thank you for something publicly here?
Sure. Yeah.
It was through you. You introduced me to and pulled me in to work with Perla Batalla, who has since become a great friend for a long time and is one of the great artists and songbirds anywhere. And Perla is just wonderful. And I want to thank you for that because not only was it fun when we were all working together, but you introduced me to another wonderful artist and wonderful person. So I want to especially thank you for that.
Oh, well, you're so very welcome. And it made my life better too, because I knew that it would just be more fun when I was playing in her band to have you there. So I'm really glad that worked out.
Oh, me too.
Everybody won on that.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
You're welcome, Chazz. Since we're doing public thank yous, I want to thank you for help being a conduit for Michael McDonald, for Mike ending up singing on one of my records,
Oh, that's right. Fabulous.
I've never forgotten that. And I really appreciate so much because that happened because you opened that door for me. So thank you for that.
Listen, man, you're so welcome. One of the great thrills, and I know you feel the same way about this, is anytime you can connect good people with good people. Oh, it feels great.
It does, and it speaks for itself. I mean, there needs to be no other reason to do it just than to do it because everybody just benefits. There's there's such a beautiful it's such a win, when there's somebody that that you think somebody else would really appreciate, and it happens, and the door opens, and everybody gets to develop their own friendships and musical relationships with these people. It's to me that's one of the most thrilling parts of being in our music community is referring each other and watching each other have these opportunities. It's just, for me, it's always been really wonderful to see my friends soar.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wouldn't it be nice if at some point we could rent out an auditorium or something and we could all kind of just give a brief testimonial of thanks to all those people who believed in us enough to recommend us or get us on a gig or send us over to this door to walk through. Our careers would not have happened if other people hadn't seen something and been willing to put their reputation on the line as well in recommending someone else.
Absolutely.
But it is a beautiful thing, man. It's great. It's great.
So, Chazz, we only have about 10 minutes left, and there's a bunch of things I want to ask you. So let me get to those questions. I want to geek out with you a little bit on Saved by the Bell. How did you end up singing and playing bass on that? I think our listeners would want to know.
Sure. Well, let's see. Back when that happened, the guy that wrote the theme is a guy named Scott Gale. And I met Scott Gale through a drummer friend of mine, a guy named Doug Gore. And Doug and I had a little R&B kind of party band together called the Suspenders. And anyway, Scott hired us for I think at the time Scott was working for Whit Thomas Harris Productions or something. So he hired us to play at their Christmas party. So we're playing along and whatnot, and I was singing a few tunes here and there, and we played the party, and we're hanging out with everybody. And anyway, a couple of weeks later, I get a call from Scott, and he says, "Hey, I'm over here at Rich Ames's house," and Rich was living in Venice at the time, as was I. Mm-hmm. And he said, "I was wondering if you'd want to come over and sing this little thing I've got for me." And I said, "Yeah, man, sure, I'll be right over." And I was thinking, wow, close. I don't have to drive to the valley or whatever. This is great. And so I went over and I sang this tune. which turned out to be the initial Saved by the Bell theme that Scott was presenting for the title theme of this show. So, we did that, and life went on, and I didn't give it a second thought. So I don't know what the time period was, but after a little while, Scott called me back, and he said, "Hey, man, this thing that you sang is going into pilot, and we need to recut the theme, and we need to do some cues, some underscoring cues." And I said, "Oh, great, fantastic." So it turned out we went out to Bill Schnee's studio, and I walk in, and we're doing the underscoring first. So I'm playing bass on this part. So I walk in, and who's on the drums? Jim Keltner. And I'm going like,
great.
Wow, here's one of my heroes. And I look over on guitar, Dean Parks.
Oh, wonderful.
And I'm like, swing. And of course, Rich Ames, Scotty's partner, was playing keyboards. So we did the underscoring, and then it came time for me to re-sing the theme. And Scotty had hired a dear friend and great singer, Sonny Wilkinson, who was there to sing backgrounds with me. So, anyway, this was a pilot for NBC. So in come the NBC suits, behind the glass. And so anyway, we sang the theme, and it was funny, because I was singing along, and one of the guys would get on the talk back, and they'd say, man, can you make it a little more rock and roll? So I try and make it a little more rock and roll, and they go, well, that's good, but can you enunciate a little more? And so
pick one.
Yeah. So I tried to, just stay cool and go with the flow. And we kept doing it. And then Sonny and I sang backgrounds. And at one point, the words you always love to hear, we've got it. Yeah, and right. So we left, and God bless Sonny Wilkinson, man. She got us an AFTRA contract on this thing.
Oh, nice. Which leads to my next question. Do you still get residuals for that as a singer and as a player?
Yes, I do. I sure do, and I have since 1989. And what was amazing about this show? It wasn't just Saved by the Bell. Then there was a spinoff a couple years later called Saved by the Bell, The New Class.
Right.
So they used the same theme, thank goodness. Wow. And there's one other little aspect of this story. After the show came on air and pilot for a while, they recorded another version of it with Michael Damian, who was, I guess, an NBC soap star. And they aired that version.
And a pop star, yeah.
And a pop star, yes. And in one of the nicest things that ever has happened to me, apparently enough people wrote to NBC and said, we kind of like the original theme better, that they decided to go with that. That's my understanding of it anyway. So that was really a fortuitous and very sweet thing that happened.
Well, and my takeaway on that story, and I'm going to cut you because we have like 4 minutes left and I still have 3 questions, but okay. my takeaway is just the value, the importance of just saying yes. When people say, "Hey, you want to come over and sing this song?" what it can lead to is a completely life-changing path and direction. So, aren't you glad you said yes to that one?
Yes. Absolutely.
So in our last 4 minutes, here's my closing questions to you. The first one is a 2-part question. Since the show is called Making It, what does making it mean to you, both personally and professionally? And the second part of the question is, can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career?
I think I'll answer the second one the second part first.
Okay.
As far as, you have to prepare. You have to, if you're an instrumentalist or vocalist or whatever your discipline is or disciplines are, you got to do your homework. The second thing is you need to be professional. And what I mean by that is that you need to show up not only prepared, but your gear needs to work. Your chords need to be in order. You need to show up on time, or even better, ahead of time. You don't want to hold up a session for any reason. You don't want to hold it up because your gear is malfunctioning. You don't want to hold it up because you're not cutting it. Because, man, heads turn, and especially back in the day, doing a TV or film thing, time is money. And you don't want to be the one holding up, a session. Agreed. And then I think the third thing is just be a good human being. There are any number of uber qualified people who could do the gigs that I was lucky enough to do. But, you've got to be able to get along with people, because when you're touring, you're with the same people a lot of the time. And it's real easy to have people get on your nerves and for you to get on their nerves. And I don't know, those are the three things right off the top of my head that.
Great tips. Absolutely. And so what is, and again, we've got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to keep pushing through. What does making it mean to you on any level?
Making it for me, I think, was simply the fact that I got to do something that I loved to do in life. Yes, some of it was, I got to work with some incredibly talented people, not just the big names, but so many incredible musicians that I got to share things with and I learned a lot from. And simply being able to make my living as a working artist for as long as I have, that was pretty much making it for me. The rest of it, playing with artists or having a little bit of notoriety via association, that was lovely too. That has some lovely perks. But I think just being able to get to do something I love to do and pay the bills by doing that.
Right.
That
Absolutely.
to me is success.
Totally agree with you. And in our last minute, Chazz, our 60-second question, at this point of your life, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh boy. I think I would tell myself, not that I have any regrets or anything, but I sort of wish, in looking back, that I'd sort of stayed in the songwriting trenches a little bit and not be diverted away, because that was originally what I came out here to do. I was lucky enough to end up playing sessions and touring and doing wonderful things, but that wasn't my goal. My goal was to just be part of a creative force, i.e. a band. Mm-hmm. But at some point, after trying that and almost going bankrupt doing it, I kind of had to go where life took me and allowed me to survive. Yeah.
On that note, I thank you for spending the hour with me, and we're going to put a link to your coffee site as well, because we didn't even get to talk about that. So, Chazz Frichtel, thank you so much, and thanks everybody for listening and joining us tonight.
Thank you, Terry.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Woman.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.